On this episode of Cumberland Rover, it's a tale of failure and redemption, chaos, destruction, and a man wearing a floral shirt photographs a pair of honkers on the beach.
Soon may the wellerman come, bring us coffee, tea, and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, take our leave and go. At a fair in the sun of town, her hair was blonde and this was around. Soon may the wellerman come around.
It's a chilly morning on Kentucky Lake in early April. I'm launching the skiff from one of the rare patches of public land on the western shore of Kentucky Lake. I'm on a mission to explore a couple of islands nearby to one another, and having consulted my charts and the hourly wind forecast, I'm pretty confident that conditions are perfect to be able to sail there on a broad reach in the 12-foot baby skiff. Winds are out of the north, which means they're blowing down the length of Kentucky Lake from Kentucky Dam. The water is very flat, of course, in the cove, and I had a good steady wind. I could see a pretty high swell rolling out on the big lake, but I figured that the island would provide a lot of protection for the course I intended to sail, so I didn't expect to get much swell. As soon as I left the protection of the cove, it just kept getting bumpier and bumpier the further I went, and I knew that it would only continue to do so. Not at all what I expected. I expected reasonably flat water. I could see the course that lay ahead to the island was pretty rough, and not something I wanted to chance in the baby skiff. So reluctantly, I made the decision to turn back towards shore. I was near a second cove just south of the launch site, so I figured it would be a good opportunity just to do some sailing about back there. You can see here, there's basically no wind. A chop is running against me, and what little wind there is, I don't have a good angle on it at all, and there's a bunch of brush to leeward, so I don't really know what I'm thinking here. You may also notice that there's an oar missing on the port side. We'll get to that later. The main sheet got caught up in a shrub, and probably the only thing I did right on this day was to think quickly enough to release the snap hook from the Traveler, and that way I was able just to pull the main sheet out. I was a little frustrated with myself for ending up in that situation. I didn't care about the scuffed paint on the hull, but I would have been mad if the sail was damaged or any of the running gear, which it wasn't, luckily. Having emerged on the other side of chaos, I'm now ready to row far away from this place, and it's at that point that I realize I'm missing an oar, and I figured that it must have been knocked loose during all the chaos, getting caught up in the brush, so I began pulling with my one oar, pulling and paddling, and I'm trying to find the other one, figuring it's floating somewhere in the brush. Eventually, after searching thoroughly around the brush, I realize it's not there. It couldn't have gone that far. So I figure maybe somehow it got knocked loose when I was hoisting the sail. So I start painstakingly making my way upwind to that general area, and it would have helped a lot if I had some way to view the GoPro footage. Then I would have known exactly where it happened, but that's not a possibility with this particular camera. I was starting to think that I wasn't gonna find it, and even cheap oars, which these are really not cheap. Oars are expensive. And then finally I saw it, and I could breathe a sigh of relief. It had washed up on the bank. This shot somewhat illustrates the bumpy conditions. Even in the protected lee of this point, it's still pretty bumpy. You don't want to push your luck too much in a tiny boat like this on a big lake, and if I was going to push my luck, this would definitely not have been the day to do it. I felt a little defeated after the first attempt, but about a week later, a second opportunity presented itself with some favorable wind and weather, and I decided to attempt the sail out to the islands again. I'm setting out from the same launch area, which is really just a gravel parking lot at the water's edge. On the previous attempt, the wind was out of the north. This time it's out of the southwest. That will put me on a beam reach, maybe a close reach at some points, if the wind is actually reaching the surface of the water. And on this lake and in this area, that's always kind of a gamble. It really just depends what kind of foliage and terrain is in the immediate area. Last time the wind was blowing down the length of the lake, and this time it's originating from the bank that I'm sailing nearest to, which is good in one way. It means that there will likely be very minimal waves and flat water. That seems to be the case as I'm setting out from the cove. These conditions are just about perfect for this boat. Flat water with winds 8 to 12 miles an hour, just smooth sailing. I'm holding a steady beam reach, preparing to turn upwind a little bit as I near the small island off to starboard. I was able to sail within maybe 20 strokes of the oar of the first small island. I was pretty satisfied with that. The wind had died down quite a bit as I set out for the second island, which was a few hundred meters east of this smaller island. For persevering through the previous week's failure, I was rewarded with a nesting pair of Canada geese. I felt bad for disturbing them, and honestly, if I knew they were there, I probably wouldn't have landed. But it turns out during nesting season, geese are nesting everywhere, anywhere they can find. The shallow flats, along the creek banks, and out on these islands. This couple chose a beautiful place to raise some goslings. This channel will continue to charge along under full sail, but at cumberlandrover.com I offer videos not available on this channel or anywhere else. The videos and articles are free. I don't run ads, but I do have a store offering some unique handmade products of my own design that I think will be of interest to sailors and outdoor enthusiasts.